Hi, this is Ann Pearson. I wanted to jump in here real quick and just give you a short tutorial on using this sample model for predicting paralegal profitability. Now, I did put in the notes section in the comments some instructions for you or just some general information on what's in there. You're going to want to use the light orange fields to put in your calculations. And you might say, well, why do I want to do this? Well, this is going to help you know if you have the potential for profitability from each timekeeper. Maybe it shows you that if you just increase their rate by $25 an hour or $50 an hour, you'd have a lot more room for a potential raise or bonus, or a lot more room for profitability. Now, before I get started, one thing you'll note in here, there's not a field for overtime yet, because a lot of managing partners use this for associates, or maybe law firm administrators are using it in January to set goals for their paralegals. In a minute, I'll show you how to use it at the end of the year and how to insert an overtime field in here. But let's assuming you're using it at the beginning of the year. You've got a paralegal who's making $50,000, that's their salary. Now, this field is automatically calculated. You can see when it's put in there, there's an actual calculation. If your benefits are a lot different than the industry average of 30%, and you have an exact number, you could override that formula and insert your number here. But I like to just keep it as an industry average, because remember, this isn't calculating exact profitability. It's just looking at being able to predict whether or not this particular timekeeper is contributing towards the profitability. All right, and then let's say the average bonus over the last 3 years has been $3,000. So we've got total direct costs of $68,000. Now, you wouldn't put in the overhead here unless you were actually going to start calculating what the closer to exact profitability might be. This model is really just based on the rule of a third. And how it's calculated here is this number you'll see is a formula, and it's based on B7, which is the direct cost of this timekeeper, times 3. So the rule of a third states that 1/3 of the revenue that's generated from this timekeeper goes towards their direct overhead. 1/3 gets contributed towards the firm overhead, and then 1/3 is contributed to the firm's profitability. So that's all we're really predicting here is there potential for profitability because we are within that rule of 1/3. And so if we were to change this number, let's say to $75,000, then all of our fields change, and it shows us that we should be collecting $301,500 at a minimum from this timekeeper. If we're not, we're probably not in that rule of a third where they're contributing towards the profitability. Because you could see here, if we kept this timekeeper's rate at $150 per hour, they would have to generate 2,010 hours collected, not just input into the system, collected. The break-even number is to show you where you might be. And the break-even number, all that says is, what are their direct costs versus how many hours they're putting in. So you could see here, if this person billing at $150 only put in 100, or you only collected 670 hours from that person, all they'd be doing is covering their own direct overhead, nothing else. So it wouldn't be along the lines of a rule of a third. All right, let me show you how, if you want to calculate at the end of the year and you've got someone who is not on salary, but they are an employee, non-exempt, then just go right where the bonus is and highlight that field 6, go to your insert tab, and then just put in their overtime here. So we're going to do overtime. And let's say they had $10,000 in overtime. Okay, now we can see what kind of revenue we need to collect from that timekeeper. And you could, at the end of the year, then look and see how much revenue did we collect? Only $280,000? Okay. So what needs to happen? We need to reduce their overtime. We need to raise their rate, which, let's face it, is not easy at this day and age with clients the way they are. So then that could lower it to $1,745. You could use this calculator in all kinds of ways. If you know that you have a paralegal who you're paying this much money to, and your firm's average billable hours for paralegals is 1,600 hours, this is where you could figure out, all right, if we want to pay this person that much money and they're going to get a bonus and they're going to potentially be putting in some overtime, what do we need this hourly rate to be? Does 205 make it a little bit more reasonable? Yeah. That's as easy as it is to use the sample model for predicting paralegal profitability.